Good Erev Shabbos, everyone. Erev Shabbos, Parshas Zocher, Erev Shabbos, Parshas Tetzaveh. Marching on in the recounting of the building, the mitzvah of the building of the Mishkan. Last week was the building of the structure of the Mishkan. This week is talking about the clothes of the Kohanim. We understand that nothing that was being commanded us was being commanded about the Avodah yet. The Avodah, how it's going to work and what's going to happen inside of it, that's going to come later. And if that's the case, then there's an anomaly at the beginning of this parsha, because one would expect that the parsha begins with the next section, which is the second section of the parsha, which is Hakir v'lecha es Aaron achicha v'es banov. Right, get Aaron and his children, get the Kohanim, get them all ready, and these are the begotten that they should wear. But it starts off with the Atet Tzavis b'nei Yisrael v'yichvei lecha shemen zayizach. You should take this oil, kasis lamor, that's going to be used, it's pure, to be able to light lahalos ner tamid, in order to be able to light the ner tamid and to light the menorah. Now, what does that have to do with the building of the Mishkan? The building of the menorah was already told us. And this is not about a keli, this is not about a vessel, it's not about furniture. This is about actually lighting the menorah. This is about the material that's used for the Avodah. It's not appropriate to be here, and it's certainly not appropriate to be in this parsha. If it belongs anywhere, it belongs at the end of last week's parsha. But why are we putting it at the beginning of this week's parsha? Because perhaps the Torah is telling me that, granted, in last week's parsha, that was all about the kelim, it was all about the building of the Mishkan. But at the end of the day, you put up a building, you have to understand that a building is a beautiful thing. But you got to have the lights on. There's got to be something going on inside of it. A beautiful structure is nothing more than just a beautiful structure. But a beautiful structure with a pnim, a beautiful structure with something internal, with something beautiful inside of it, that's a beautiful structure. So last week we talked about the building of the Mishkan. And then the Torah comes and says, now that you're finished, now make sure you turn the lights on. And then we'll talk about the Kohanim. And then we'll talk about everything. We'll talk about their clothes and what to do and what to do and what it should look like and all of that. But at the end of the day, put up the building, put in the furniture, set the place up, and then turn on the lights. It is an instruction how to make a Mishkan for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not just by doing actions, it's not just by doing external things, but it's by lighting a fire inside. Very similar to the message that we spoke about last Shabbos, that it's about turning on the fire. This is what Purim is all about. It's about igniting the fire. This is what these days are all about. These days are all about making sure that we're not merely just external things, that there is something burning inside. We don't just talk about loving Klal Yisrael. We give matanos avyonim. We give mishleach manos. We hug and we kiss and we dance and we take, I love you, Klal Yisrael. Because it's not just about structures. It's about fires inside. It's about something real going on. And we commemorate the Tainus. As we fast on Erev Purim to commemorate the Tainus. It's weird. Because why is the Tainus so important that we have to commemorate the Tainus? I can understand that we're commemorating, and that we're fasting for the commemoration of the destruction of the temple. I understand we're fasting because of Gedaliah ben Achikum, because of the terrible tragedies that happened in those times. And that we are fasting in order to be able to do tshuva for the things that happened to us. Why are we fasting? To remember a fast that actually became obsolete. Because that day turned into an incredible day. That day turned into a day of an incredible miracle. So why are we fasting for the fast they fasted, that Esther fasted, whether she fasted the 3 days in Nisan or whether it was the fast on the 13th? Why are we fasting for that? Because the purpose of that fast was to make sure that our lights were on. The purpose of that fast was to make sure that we weren't just fighting a war, but that we were fighting a war for God. Was to make sure that we had God inside of us. You would never tell somebody to fast when they were going to fight war. You give them food, even if you don't give them great food, but you give them some kind of rations, you give them some kind of something to get a little energy. You can't go fight without any energy, but when you're fighting for God, it's totally different. The fast on that day was to remind us. The fast on that day so that we understood that all that we're doing is just the outside, but the inside is our connection to Kodesh Baruch Hu. And that's why we fast nowadays, to remind ourselves to make sure that the fire is on, to remind ourselves that to make sure that we are something real, and that we're something that has tochen, something that has some kind of content. Now go celebrate Purim. Make sure you build a structure, but make sure the lights are on. And if the lights are on and burning bright, then your structure is gorgeous. Whenever I speak about the subject, I always tell over a Maisa. I'll tell you, it's a parable, it's a beautiful Maisa. There was in the old days, they used to stand by the trains when they didn't have the arms that came down. There would be a person standing there with a lantern, and he would wave the lantern, and people would know the train was coming, and the cars would stop. A terrible tragedy happened. It was raining out. Car went over the tracks, and as it went over the tracks, got hit by a train. Many people died. The family of the people that died sued the train company. At the trial, the person who was waving the lantern was called to testify. And they asked if he was on duty that night. He said he was on duty. He showed proof that he was there. Were you outside? I was outside. Were you waving the lantern? He said, I was waving the lantern. And they won the case. And he was touted as a hero. They lifted him up on the shoulders and they carried him out of the courtroom. He saved millions of dollars for the train company. And he says to himself, I'm very lucky that they never asked me if the lantern was lit. We wave lanterns. We speak a mean game. We put on an awesome show. But is the fire lit inside? That's what we got to ask ourselves. And that's what we got to do. Hachon of Purim. Tainus Esther. Parshas Zocher. Make sure the fire's on. So that on Purim, when you pour a little alcohol on that fire, it just ignites. And it burns for the rest of the year. And I know it's similar to what I said last week. So either, if you didn't hear last week, I don't have to worry. If you heard last week, it's Chazorah, and it adds to it. And it just reminds us, this is what we have to be doing. Learn the halachas of Purim, so that when we do the mitzvahs of Purim, it's not just a shell, it's not just waving a lantern, but there's a fire on inside. Go over Halanisim. Remember what you're going to be saying on Purim, so that when you say it, you could say it with a little bit of kavanah. Halanisim yalapurkan, Rabbanu Shalom. I feel you everywhere you are. Start to fan the flames, so that it can burn bright on Purim, and it can burn bright through the year, until that moment of the Geula Shlema. B'meher Avi Amenu, Amen. Have a beautiful, awesome, amazing Shabbos, and a beautiful, awesome, amazing Purim.